Carl Jung's 4 personality types, the truth about who you are. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Carl Jung. Welcome to Spiritual Wisdom, where we explore the deeper truths that shape who we are. In today's video, we're diving into Carl Jung's 4 personality types, a powerful key to understanding how you think, feel, and connect with the world around you. Are you a thinker, feeler, sensor, or intuitive? Recognizing your type isn't just interesting, it's transformational. These insights can help you improve your relationships, make wiser decisions, and live a more authentic, fulfilling life. So as you watch, ask yourself, have I truly discovered who I am? Drop your personality type in the comments below and share how it shows up in your daily life. Let's grow together. 1. Jung's 4 personality functions. In the world of self-discovery, few insights are as profound as Carl Jung's theory of personality functions. At the core of Jungian psychology lies a powerful truth. Each of us is born with a dominant way of perceiving and interpreting reality. It's not just a habit, it's the lens through which we see life, make decisions, and form connections. Yet, in a world that often forces conformity, many people are led away from their natural function, causing a silent inner conflict that disconnects them from who they truly are. As Jung once said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Let's explore this journey inward through the lens of spiritual wisdom. Jung identified 4 core psychological functions: thinking, feeling, sensation, and intuition. Each person has one that is dominant. It's like the lead character in the movie of your mind. This dominant function shapes your worldview, your choices, and your relationships. But here's the paradox. While one of these functions is your natural strength, societal conditioning often pushes you to suppress it in favor of what's deemed normal or acceptable. This disconnection is not just psychological, it is spiritual. It leaves you fragmented, longing, and out of alignment with your soul's design. Let's begin with the thinking type. If this is your dominant function, logic and structure are your guiding lights. You seek truth through reason, and you make decisions based on analysis rather than emotional influence. Thinkers thrive in environments where systems, data, and clarity are valued. However, if you were raised in a space that prioritized emotional sensitivity over rational thought, you might have been told to stop overthinking or be more emotionally available. Over time, suppressing your thinking function may have led to confusion, self-doubt, or an internal sense of chaos. Rediscovering this part of yourself is not just healing. It's a spiritual awakening back to order and authenticity. Next are the feeling types. These individuals are guided by values, emotional depth, and a deep sense of meaning. They make decisions by tuning into relationships and ethical principles rather than cold facts. Their superpower is empathy. They feel the emotional temperature of a room without a word being spoken. But in a logic-driven world, feelers are often labeled as too sensitive or irrational. This judgment leads many to bury their emotional instincts, causing them to become disconnected from the wisdom of their heart. Reclaiming this function is a journey of returning to your soul's emotional compass and embracing spiritual wisdom that validates your inner truth. Then we have the sensation types. These are the realists, grounded, practical, and fully engaged with the present moment. They trust what they can see, touch, and experience through the five senses. They often excel in fields where tangible results matter: engineering, craftsmanship, or hands-on service. However, if you were encouraged to dream bigger or think more abstractly, you may have felt out of place. Society tends to glorify visionaries and downplay grounded presence. Yet, in truth, sensation types bring the sacredness of the here and now. Their spiritual path lies in honoring the divine in the present moment, the miracle of now. Finally, there are the intuition types, the visionaries, dreamers, and pattern seekers. If this is your dominant function, you are constantly scanning the horizon for deeper meanings and future possibilities. You think in symbols, metaphors, and ideas not yet born. You might be drawn to philosophy, spirituality, or the creative arts. But if your upbringing demanded practicality over possibility, you may have been told you were too unrealistic or had your head in the clouds. Yet, suppressing your intuition means cutting off the very channel through which spiritual wisdom flows. Your healing lies in trusting the unseen, the yet to come, and the whispers of your inner voice. Each of us is wired with one dominant function for a reason. It is not a flaw to be corrected, but a truth to be honored. Jung's framework is not about labeling, but about liberation. When you live in alignment with your core function, you enter a state of inner harmony. Life flows more naturally, decisions become clearer, and your relationships begin to reflect your true nature. This is more than self-awareness. It is a spiritual awakening. It is remembering who you are beneath the noise of expectation and returning to your divine design. So, ask yourself, which of these functions resonates most deeply with your inner world? And more importantly, have you been living in alignment with it or in resistance to it? If this message resonates with your soul, take a moment and affirm, I am ready to live in alignment with my true self. Type it in the comments below to claim your journey. 2. Introversion versus extroversion. Attitude types. Carl Jung taught that introversion and extroversion are not about being shy or outgoing, but about the direction in which your energy naturally flows. Introversion means your energy is directed inward. You feel most alive when reflecting, being in solitude, or diving deep into your thoughts. Your inner world becomes your source of clarity, strength, and renewal. Extroversion, on the other hand, means your energy flows outward. You thrive in active environments, draw power from interactions, and often process your thoughts by speaking them aloud. Neither is better. They are simply two attitudes that shape how we experience life. These two orientations, according to Jung, form the foundation of how our four core psychological functions, thinking, feeling, sensing, and intuition, express themselves. Whether you're introverted or extroverted determines how you approach decisions, relationships, work, and even spirituality. It's not about behavior, it's about energy. For example, someone may seem social and talkative, but they still need long hours alone to reset. Others might appear quiet, yet feel energized after hours of conversation. What matters is not how you appear to others, but how you recharge your mental and emotional batteries. This distinction is crucial in a world that often demands constant engagement. If you're introverted and try to force yourself into non-stop external activity, you'll feel drained, scattered, even lost. If you're extroverted but stuck in isolation for too long, you might feel disconnected, uninspired, or anxious. Jung's wisdom invites you to stop pretending and start aligning with your natural attitude. When you understand how your energy works, life begins to feel less like resistance and more like flow. These insights also explain why people struggle when they live out of alignment. If an introvert is constantly in high energy, social roles without time to reflect, burnout becomes inevitable. If an extrovert is locked into solitary work with no chance to connect, their creativity might wither. Understanding whether you are introverted or extroverted allows you to design your life around your true nature. It's a spiritual wisdom that brings peace not just in how you act, but in how you are. Carl Jung believed this knowledge wasn't just psychological, it was transformational. He saw personality not as a fixed label, but as a sacred map to deeper self-awareness. When you recognize your natural energy orientation, you begin the process of individuation, the journey of becoming whole. You no longer chase someone else's idea of success or force yourself into roles that don't fit. Instead, you start showing up with presence, honesty, and balance, guided by the flow of your authentic self. Are you ready to embrace your true nature, whether it flows inward or outward? If this message resonated with you, comment below. I honor my energy to affirm your self-awareness and inspire others on the same path. 3. 8. Personality types. Each of us processes the world through different mental lenses, what Carl Jung called functions, and each function appears in either an introverted or extroverted form, creating 8 distinct personality types. These are not rigid labels, but doorways into deeper self-awareness and spiritual awakening. Extroverted thinking types are naturally drawn to order, structure, and measurable results. They shine in leadership roles and are often the ones organizing people, timelines, and outcomes with precision. Their minds move quickly, seeking logic in the external world. However, in their pursuit of efficiency, they may overlook the emotional and spiritual layers of life. They must learn that true success is not just about output, but about inner harmony. Introverted thinking, by contrast, dives deep into the inner world of ideas. These individuals are independent thinkers, quietly analyzing and deconstructing systems in pursuit of truth. They prefer depth over speed and often appear detached from group norms. Their path to spiritual awakening lies in bringing their insights into conversation with others, bridging solitude and connection, intellect and feeling. Extroverted feeling personalities are socially attuned and empathetic. They sense what others need and often serve as peacemakers in families and communities. Their decisions are guided by shared values, and they thrive when their environment feels emotionally cohesive. But in always trying to please others, they risk neglecting their own soul. Their growth involves learning to honor their truth, even if it disrupts external harmony. Introverted feeling types are guided by a strong internal compass. They hold deep values and convictions that may not be visible on the surface, but shape every decision they make. These individuals are not easily influenced, as they measure right and wrong against their own inner scale. Their journey involves expressing this moral clarity outwardly, not to convince others, but to live authentically and vulnerably. Extroverted sensation types engage the world through their 5 senses. They live for the present moment, experiencing life with a vivid physical immediacy. Whether through food, music, nature, or movement, they are grounded in what is real and tangible. Yet, In being constantly stimulated, they can overlook the symbolic or spiritual dimension of life. Their awakening begins when they slow down and recognize the sacred in the simple. Introverted sensation, on the other hand, relies heavily on memory, tradition, and familiarity. These types are rooted in the past, drawing from experience to interpret the present. They are often nostalgic, reflective, and deeply loyal. While this gives them a sense of stability, it may also lead to resistance when life calls for change. They must learn that spiritual growth often means releasing the past in order to walk into a new version of themselves. Extroverted intuition types are the dreamers, the innovators. They are constantly scanning for new patterns, ideas, and possibilities. Their excitement lies in what could be, and they often leap from one inspiration to the next. While their creativity is unmatched, they can struggle with follow-through. Their transformation begins when they focus their energy, channeling their visionary power into something lasting and grounded. Introverted intuition is the realm of the seer. These individuals perceive patterns beneath the surface, sensing meanings others can't yet articulate. Their insights often come in flashes, intuitive downloads that feel more like revelation than reason. They move between the conscious and unconscious, seeing symbols in dreams, art, and behavior. But they must stay tethered to the physical world. Their challenge is to embody their visions, turning spiritual truths into living practices. Together, these 8 types reveal not only how we think or feel, but how we awaken. Each one carries a unique tension, a shadow to integrate, a lesson to embody. And the more we understand how our energy flows, the more consciously we live. Because at its heart, personality is not just psychology, it is the map we use to travel toward wholeness. Which of these 8 types feels most like home to you? If you found your truth in today's message, declare it in the comments. This is how my energy flows. Let it be a reminder of who you are and inspire others to discover their true nature too. And if this helped you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom for more insights on personality and purpose. 4. Personality is a functional hierarchy. Everyone carries within them a unique structure of the psyche, a functional hierarchy that determines how we perceive, decide, and respond to the world. At the top of this internal system is the dominant function, the most developed and instinctive part of your personality. This function guides your natural approach to life, whether it's logical thinking, deep feeling, practical sensing, or intuitive insight. It shapes your default way of understanding the world and is often the most obvious part of your personality to others. Supporting the dominant is the auxiliary function, which plays a vital balancing role. If the dominant is the mind's primary voice, the auxiliary is its closest advisor. It brings balance by offering a contrasting or complementary perspective. For example, someone with a dominant thinking function might have an auxiliary feeling function, helping them weigh human values alongside logical outcomes. This dynamic allows you to move through life with greater flexibility and emotional intelligence, enriching your decision-making and social awareness. Deeper in the background is the tertiary function, a less conscious part of your personality that may feel underused or immature. Though it plays a quieter role, this function often surfaces in times of rest, reflection, or personal experimentation. While it may not drive your everyday behavior, it still colors your thoughts and reactions in subtle ways. Nurturing this part of yourself can bring more balance to your inner world and help you grow in areas that have long remained dormant. At the lowest level sits the inferior function, often seen as the weakest and most unconscious aspect of the psyche. Yet, paradoxically, this function holds the greatest potential for growth and transformation. It is the gatekeeper to your shadow self, the parts you've disowned, denied, or simply never developed. While it may show up in moments of stress or conflict, it also offers a sacred opportunity. Engaging with your inferior function can spark profound spiritual awakening. It challenges your identity and urges you to embrace wholeness by integrating what was once hidden. As Jung said, wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of one's being, but by integration of the contraries. Living with spiritual wisdom means embracing this entire hierarchy, honoring the dominant, learning from the auxiliary, nurturing the tertiary, and bravely confronting the inferior. Each function holds a mirror to your soul, showing you where you shine and where you are still unfolding. This journey isn't about fixing what's broken. It's about awakening to all that you already are and allowing every layer of your personality to come into harmony. When you begin to recognize the value of even your least developed traits, you start to walk a path of inner unity where awareness replaces resistance and integration leads to transformation. If you found this insight into your functional hierarchy valuable, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a chance to grow in self-awareness. Integration is the path to wholeness. Type in the comments, I am ready to integrate all parts of myself. 5. The inferior function and shadow work. The inferior function, as Carl Jung explained, is the weakest and most underdeveloped part of your psychological type. It's not just a blind spot, it's the part of your inner world that feels awkward, unreliable, and even threatening. If your dominant function is thinking, then your inferior function is feeling. If you're naturally intuitive, your inferior function is likely sensing. And the problem is, most people don't even realize this imbalance exists. They're living out of alignment, overusing one function while suppressing the other, which creates psychological tension and confusion in everyday life. That's where the shadow begins to form. Jung defined the shadow as the collection of traits, emotions, and desires we repress, things like rage, insecurity, vulnerability, shame, or jealousy. We learn early on that certain parts of us are unacceptable, so we push them into the unconscious. But what we bury doesn't disappear. It grows. It shows up in passive-aggressive behavior, emotional outbursts, or judgment toward others. The more you deny your shadow, the more power it has over you, controlling your decisions from behind the scenes. Take the example of someone who thrives in logic and order, constantly praised for their rational mind and emotional control. On the surface, they appear strong and steady, but behind closed doors, their relationships may be strained. They might avoid emotional intimacy or feel overwhelmed by someone else's feelings. This isn't because they're cold-hearted. It's because their inferior feeling function, the one they've ignored, has become a part of their shadow. Until that emotional dimension is acknowledged, no amount of logic will bring inner peace or authentic connection. The path to integration begins with self-honesty. Shadow work isn't about eliminating your flaws. It's about illuminating them. The anger you suppress may be signaling a boundary that needs defending. The envy you feel might point to an unlived part of your own potential. Instead of judging these reactions, Jung urges us to explore them. Every uncomfortable emotion is a mirror, showing you what's unresolved inside. Your triggers are not your enemies, they're invitations to heal. And this is where real spiritual wisdom lies. Wholeness doesn't come from perfection, but from integration. Embracing your inferior function is not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming whole. By bringing conscious awareness to your shadow and learning to work with it, not against it, you stop projecting your pain onto others and start reclaiming your truth. You discover that the very parts you tried to hide contain the power to transform your life. Carl Jung taught that one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. When you stop resisting the parts of you that feel uncomfortable, and instead approach them with curiosity and compassion, you open the door to genuine transformation. Your inferior function, once a source of shame or confusion, becomes a source of strength. Your shadow, once feared, becomes your guide. Let's support one another on this deep journey of inner healing. Comment below, "I embrace my shadow to become whole." And here's something beautiful. If you see someone else commenting that, take a moment to like their comment or reply with a kind word. It's how we keep this space full of light, growth, and real connection. If you believe in this kind of supportive spiritual community, type 1 in the comments so we know how many of us are walking this path together. 6. Individuation becoming whole. Individuation is the sacred process of becoming whole, not by striving to be better, but by learning to integrate all that you are. In Jungian thought, it's not about chasing perfection or cutting away your flaws. It's about bringing together the pieces you've rejected, your intellect and your emotions, your strength and your tenderness, your fears and your hopes into a unified and conscious self. Most people are conditioned to live only half of who they are. From a young age, you're rewarded for being logical and punished for being sensitive, praised for being independent, and shamed for needing support. Over time, what doesn't fit into the persona you build gets pushed into the shadows. But those shadows don't disappear. They wait. And the journey of individuation begins when you finally turn toward them. You begin to face the traits you've disowned. Your anger, your sadness, your jealousy, your desires. You stop pretending to be only what the world accepts and start reclaiming your hidden power. This process is not easy. It requires emotional honesty, deep reflection, and the willingness to meet the parts of yourself that you were once afraid of. But every time you do, you expand your awareness and step deeper into your truth. This is where spiritual awakening begins, not in bypassing your pain, but in transforming it. Awakening is not about escaping reality or becoming more spiritual in appearance. It's about diving into the raw truth of who you are, allowing your contradictions to coexist, and learning to listen to the quiet voice of your inner wisdom. A person who is truly individuated can hold opposing qualities in balance. They can lead with compassion and still assert their boundaries. They can think critically and still honor their intuition. They stop living from a mask and start moving from their core. Individuation is a lifelong unfolding. There is no final version of you to become, only deeper layers to uncover, accept, and integrate. As Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, And that privilege is yours each time you choose to live in alignment with your essence instead of your conditioning. Each time you choose wholeness over image, presence over perfection. In that space, your humanity becomes sacred. Your story becomes your strength. And your path becomes a mirror through which the soul awakens. If this message resonated with your soul, leave a comment below. I embrace every part of who I am. I am becoming whole. Let this be a reminder that your journey matters. And if you feel called to support others on this path, like or reply to someone else's comment with kindness. Together, we grow in truth and spiritual wholeness. Seven, applying Jung's theory in life. Understanding Carl Jung's personality theory isn't just about self-analysis. It's about transforming how we live, love, and grow. In relationships, conflict often stems from differences in perception, not character flaws. A person who leads with thinking may prioritize fairness and logic, while another who leads with feeling may be guided by values and emotional harmony. Without this awareness, misunderstandings arise, each assuming the other is insensitive or irrational. But once you recognize these core functions, empathy deepens. You stop trying to change the other person and start appreciating their unique way of processing life. You begin to listen differently, love more consciously, and build bonds that honor individuality rather than demanding conformity. In careers, the alignment between one's dominant function and job role is the key to genuine fulfillment. Intuitives, for instance, flourish in environments where they can explore new ideas, envision the future, and innovate beyond the present. If forced into repetitive or overly structured tasks, their energy wanes and their creativity withers. Sensors, on the other hand, feel most alive when engaging with concrete details and hands-on experiences. They thrive in roles with clear steps, measurable goals, and real-world applications. When your work reflects how your mind naturally operates, motivation becomes organic. Success doesn't feel forced. It becomes the natural expression of living in alignment with your design. This is not just professional strategy. This is spiritual wisdom in motion, guiding you toward your purpose. When it comes to solving problems, each personality type brings a valuable perspective. Thinkers analyze challenges through the lens of logic and structure, stripping away emotional noise to find practical solutions. Feelers, meanwhile, prioritize the human element, asking how decisions impact relationships, values, and emotional well-being. Sensors focus on present realities and grounded action, while intuitives stretch toward abstract connections, seeing what others may overlook. In teams, these differences can be a source of frustration or a wellspring of creativity. When we stop judging and start integrating these diverse approaches, collaboration turns into collective brilliance. Instead of clashing, minds complement. Instead of egos competing, deeper understanding emerges. Jung's theory is not a rigid system. It's a mirror that reflects your inner architecture. It reveals the invisible threads shaping how you interpret reality, make decisions, and relate to others. By recognizing these threads, you awaken from unconscious patterns and reclaim the power to choose intentionally. This process is not about labeling yourself. It's about becoming more of who you truly are. It is a path of spiritual awakening that begins with self-awareness and leads to inner harmony. And when you bring that awareness into relationships, into your career, and into how you solve life's challenges, You don't just live, you evolve. That is the essence of transformation. That is the silent power of spiritual wisdom at work. To affirm your commitment to growth and understanding, declare it in the comments. I choose self-awareness and empathy. Let this be your reminder and an inspiration for others that personal growth starts with knowing yourself and honoring the differences in others. 8. Misunderstandings and modern adaptations. Carl Jung's original theory of psychological types was never meant to be a rigid system that confines people to fixed categories. Yet over time, tools like the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, MBTI, have simplified and, in many ways, distorted his deeper insights. Jung's work emphasized that personality is not a box, it's a process. It's not about discovering what type you are and staying there. It's about understanding your natural tendencies so you can grow, evolve, and ultimately integrate the parts of yourself that remain underdeveloped. A common misunderstanding centers around introversion and extroversion. In everyday language, people confuse introversion with shyness and extroversion with sociability. But for Jung, these terms had little to do with social behavior. They referred instead to the direction of psychic energy. An introvert directs energy inward toward thoughts, feelings, and reflection. An extrovert directs energy outward toward people, action, and external stimulation. This has nothing to do with how friendly or expressive someone is. It's about where they go to recharge and how they relate to the world around them. This distinction becomes clearer when we look at real-life examples. Consider a woman named Sarah, who always believed she was extroverted because she was outgoing, led group projects, and loved being around people. But when she faced emotional exhaustion and burnout, she realized she had been performing an extroverted lifestyle that clashed with her true nature. Her creativity flourished in solitude. Her energy returned when she was alone. She wasn't socially anxious. She was simply introverted. And once she honored that truth, her health, creativity, and self-respect deepened. This is exactly what Carl Jung meant when he spoke about integration. Over time, we are called not just to live from our dominant function, whether that's thinking, feeling, intuition, or sensation, but to develop all aspects of the psyche. The journey isn't about reinforcing our strengths at the expense of our weaknesses. It's about expanding into wholeness. A thinker benefits from cultivating emotional awareness. A feeler becomes more grounded when they embrace logic. A sensor gains depth by exploring intuition. And an intuitive person becomes more effective when they ground their visions in sensory reality. Jung's philosophy was never about creating labels that limit us. It was about giving us a map, a way to understand the landscape of the self so we can move through it with greater consciousness. When tools like MBTI are used carelessly, they reduce this rich inner terrain into a personality test result that people cling to like an identity. But spiritual wisdom teaches that identity is not static. It is evolving. The true self isn't found in labels. It's found in the lifelong integration of all that we are. That's what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming whole by making the unconscious conscious. Thank you for joining us today on Spiritual Wisdom. As we've explored Carl Jung's 4 personality types, remember, understanding your true nature is not about putting yourself in a box, but about unlocking the deeper layers of who you are. Whether you are a thinker, feeler, sensor, or intuitive, Each type holds unique strengths and paths to personal growth. Embrace your type, nurture your awareness, and let that knowledge guide you toward a more authentic, fulfilling life. If this video brought you insight or clarity, please give it a thumbs up. Share it with someone who might benefit. And don't forget to subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. Make sure to turn on the notification bell so you won't miss our upcoming videos on spirituality, self-discovery, and the journey to awakening. Until next time, keep growing, keep seeking, and stay true to who you are. The burden of intelligence and the pain of seeing too much. To be conscious is not to be in control. It is to be burdened with awareness. Carl Jung. Welcome to Spiritual Wisdom, where today we explore a profound truth. The deeper your intelligence, the heavier the weight you often carry. In this video, we'll uncover why those who see too much, feel too deeply, and understand too quickly often walk a lonelier path, and how you can transform that pain into personal power. These insights aren't just for reflection, they're for transformation. So as you watch, think about how Jung's wisdom applies to your own life. Have you ever felt overwhelmed by your own awareness? Comment below and share your experience. Let's grow together. 1. The quiet cost of clarity. Have you ever walked into a room and instantly sensed what wasn't being said? The tension behind a smile, the quiet sorrow behind someone's eyes, the subtle disconnect between words and truth. This is not imagination. This is spiritual sensitivity. And while it can feel like a gift, it often comes with a silent cost. In a world that praises surface-level ease and polite ignorance, seeing deeply is not always welcomed. Yet spiritual wisdom tells us, your depth is not a flaw, it's your soul's compass. To carry truths no one else sees is to walk with a silent ache, an ache born not from delusion, but from the depth of clarity itself. When you can sense the emotional temperature of a room, pick up on what's unspoken, or feel energy shift before a word is said, you're not just observant. You're tuned into a spiritual frequency that most ignore. This awareness, this heightened perception, is a kind of inner sight, one that reveals more than just the surface. But with that sight comes the quiet burden of pretending not to see. You laugh, you engage, you play your role in society's performance, even while your inner world floods with truths no one is ready to hear. The exhaustion doesn't stem from the clarity, it stems from the suppression. Day after day, holding back your knowledge creates a fracture within. The more you mask your insight to maintain social harmony, the more distant you feel from yourself. Carl Jung understood this deeply. Loneliness, he wrote, does not come from having no people around, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important. It's a spiritual dissonance being surrounded, yet alone, being celebrated, yet unseen. Society doesn't reward your awareness, it rewards your silence. Your ability to fit in becomes more valued than your authenticity. You're loved for your adaptability, not for your truth. This is the quiet pain of the gifted, the intuitive, the emotionally intelligent. You begin to question yourself. Should I stay quiet to be accepted? Should I dull my senses to feel normal again? But what if your depth is not a flaw, but your compass? Spiritual wisdom teaches that clarity is not a curse, it's a call. A call to live from what you see, not to hide from it. The more you numb yourself to appease the world, the more disconnected you become from your soul. Yet, when you choose to honor your vision, even if no one else understands it, you reclaim your power. Seeing the truth in others means also seeing the truth in yourself. The moment you stop asking the world to validate your perception, you begin to embody the strength that was always within. You realize you were never meant to be understood by everyone. You were meant to understand yourself so fully that their understanding becomes unnecessary. This is the heart of spiritual awakening, not a glamorous revelation, but a sacred rupture. A moment where you can no longer tolerate betraying yourself just to make others comfortable. Jung reminds us, your vision will become clear only when you look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes. And that awakening isn't always soft. It asks you to let go of illusions and lean into the rawness of your own awareness. But in that rawness lies your freedom. The pain of seeing too much was never meant to break you. It was meant to guide you back to yourself. And once you follow it, you may discover that your gift was never the problem. The only burden was believing you had to hide it. And if you feel inspired by this message, type, "I trust the process," as a way to affirm your strength, patience, and commitment to growth. Let's grow together. 2. The invisible weight of perception. They say knowledge is power, but Carl Jung offered a deeper insight. Knowledge without understanding and awareness without support can feel like a curse, especially for those who perceive more than they're expected to, who feel more than they're allowed to express, and who walk through life noticing details others ignore. This isn't about being better or superior. It's about carrying the quiet, spiritual burden of heightened perception. And many men carry it in silence. In today's world, being a man who sees deeply can feel like a curse disguised as insight. You walk into rooms and sense unspoken tension. You hear what isn't being said. You see pain behind perfect smiles. You speak your truth, only to be told you're overanalyzing, too sensitive, or imagining things. And so, little by little, you begin to censor yourself. You shrink your observations. You dim your intuition just to belong. But this is not a sign of weakness. It is the invisible weight of spiritual intelligence. Carl Jung understood this well. He believed that those who carry such insight are often misjudged as distant or melancholic, not because they dislike others, but because they cannot connect through superficiality. Their minds are decoding hidden meaning, their hearts tuned to subtle emotional vibrations. And while the world rewards distraction and fast talk, these men crave the quiet where real truth lives. They are not broken. They are simply awake. Yet awakening is not always a joyful revelation. It can be an isolating journey. When you can no longer unsee what you've seen, when your soul is no longer satisfied with shallow interaction, you begin to live in a different rhythm, one that feels out of sync with the world around you. Still, this clarity is not meant to exile you. It is meant to refine you. Your awareness is not a flaw. It is a compass, pointing you toward your deeper path. You are not too much. You are exactly enough. You are what the world needs. Men who feel, who question, who lead not through force, but through presence. Men who are not afraid of complexity, who sit with discomfort, who seek truth even when it's inconvenient. Carl Jung taught that the journey of individuation, becoming your truest self, is the highest form of spiritual evolution. That journey begins when you stop betraying your sensitivity to meet the world's expectations. when you stop pretending that being numb is strength. If you've ever felt like an outsider in a room full of noise, if you've ever offered insight and been met with blank stares or rejection, it doesn't mean you're wrong. It means you're tuned in. And though this path may feel lonely at times, you are not alone. There is a quiet brotherhood of awakened men, those who have chosen truth over illusion and integrity over approval. You are walking among them, whether you know it yet or not. So what can you do with this sacred sensitivity? First, stop apologizing for it. Your ability to feel deeply, to perceive intuitively, and to think critically is not a liability. It's your superpower. Second, protect your energy and choose depth over popularity. You won't resonate with everyone. That's okay. But the few who do see you, truly see you, will be mirrors of your soul. And third, let your insight guide your healing. Turn your perception inward. Deconstruct the myths of manhood that taught you to suppress, hide, or harden. Rebuild from the truth. Let your pain be alchemical. Let it transform you. Because this is not the end of your story. It's the sacred beginning. Your awakening may have started in silence, but it's meant to lead you into purpose, into presence, into peace. True strength is not about how much you endure, but how clearly you see and how bravely you live from that vision. If you resonate with this message, comment below. I embrace this energy. 3. The anima and animus, inner archetypes that haunt and heal. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This isn't just a philosophical idea. It's a spiritual truth that lies at the heart of inner transformation. When we live unaware of our inner forces, we become puppets to unseen patterns. But when we wake up, when we begin our spiritual awakening, we reclaim authorship over our lives. A key part of Jung's spiritual wisdom revolves around two powerful archetypes, the anima and the animus. These aren't just abstract symbols. They are living forces inside every one of us. The anima is the feminine aspect that exists within every man. It speaks in emotions, dreams, moods, and intuitions. The animus is the masculine side found in every woman, revealing itself through ideas, beliefs, logic, and opinions. These inner figures shape how you love, how you argue, how you view others, and most importantly, how you see yourself. Have you ever felt an intense pull towards someone you barely knew? Or maybe you reacted too strongly to a small situation and didn't know why. Those aren't coincidences. Often, that's your unconscious anima or animus projecting a deep unmet need, an old wound, or a forgotten emotion onto the person in front of you. In truth, you might not be seeing them clearly at all. You might just be seeing a mirror of your inner world. That's the first whisper of a spiritual awakening, the realization that what you experience outside often reflects what's unresolved within. If we ignore these inner energies, chaos follows. A man ruled by his unconscious anima may fall into emotional confusion, chase unavailable partners, or misinterpret longing for love. A woman overtaken by her unconscious animus may become overly critical, emotionally detached, or confuse control with strength. Jung warned us, these archetypes carry a kind of fatal force. If left unchecked, they can fracture relationships, erode self-worth, and pass down suffering through generations. But here's the beauty of this spiritual wisdom. What once haunted you can become your greatest guide. When the anima is integrated, a man finds emotional depth creativity, and empathy. When a woman embraces her animus, she gains clarity, inner stability, and a powerful presence not from ego, but from soul. It's not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming whole. This process, this inward journey, is the essence of spiritual awakening. It begins when you start listening to your inner voices, questioning why you crave certain people, why you fear certain outcomes, or why the same emotional patterns keep repeating. As you do, your relationships change too. You no longer chase people to fill a void. You no longer argue to dominate. You connect. You communicate. You love with presence instead of projection. So ask yourself, what emotional patterns keep looping in your life? What story keeps repeating in your heart? Could it be that your anima or animus is silently at work? If so, now is the time to face it, not with fear, but with curiosity. Not with resistance, but with compassion. Because once you do, you unlock the map Jung left for all of us, a way to turn confusion into clarity, pain into purpose, and projection into peace. If this message resonates with you, don't forget to like this video and share it with others who might need these great values. Let's continue this conversation and go deeper into what these values really mean. 4. The pain of silence and self-shrinking. There is a unique kind of sorrow that comes not from confusion, but from clarity. The kind of pain only those with deep intelligence and spiritual wisdom truly understand. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Yet for many, that privilege feels like a burden. When you begin to perceive the quiet lies that lubricate daily conversation, the masks people wear just to be accepted, and the subtle betrayals of authenticity we commit in order to survive, it doesn't make you feel wise, it makes you feel lonely. The more you see, the less you can't unsee. And the more you know, the harder it becomes to say it out loud. You begin to notice this pattern. The more awake you become, the more you feel the pressure to stay silent. Not because you lack courage, but because your clarity feels like a disruption in a world addicted to comfort. So you shrink. You soften your words. You nod when you want to challenge. And slowly, your light begins to dim, not because it faded, but because you learned it was safer to hide it. But spiritual wisdom isn't meant to be shelved. It's meant to be shared. Think for a moment. Have you ever swallowed a truth just to avoid unsettling the room? Maybe you downplayed your intuition, masked your brilliance, or kept quiet so others wouldn't feel small. I remember speaking with a gifted designer who carried an almost mystical sense of creative insight. He could intuit what a project needed long before anyone else caught on. But his ideas were met with eye rolls and silence. "It's easier to let them fail than to feel like a threat," he said to me, his voice not angry, but tired. His spirit wasn't broken from failure, but from fatigue. That's the wound many sensitive, spiritually awakened individuals carry, not being misunderstood, but being dismissed. And this dismissal leads to a silent exile. You're physically present, yet spiritually absent. You're breathing, but not fully alive. You begin to feel like an outsider to your own life. But let me remind you, your depth is not a defect. Your insight is not too much. In fact, it might be the very medicine the world is thirsting for. Jung believed that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Spiritual growth, then, becomes not a luxury, but a necessity. It's how we reclaim the pieces of ourselves we abandoned just to fit in. It's how we return home to the soul. So let me ask you, where in your life have you been shrinking to stay safe? And what would shift if you chose to expand instead? If today you honored your clarity, your spiritual wisdom, your sacred knowing, what new reality might emerge? The greatest spiritual teachers never dimmed themselves to make others comfortable. They bore the burden of truth, even when it cost them approval. And now, that path is calling you too, not just to know, but to embody. Not just to see, but to be seen. The next time your truth rises in your throat, don't silence it. Breathe through the fear. Speak it not to dominate, but to liberate. Because your voice may be the exact vibration that awakens another soul. Spread this wonderful energy by commenting below. This woke people up. 5. The Cassandra Curse. Knowing too much, too soon. They called her Cassandra, the ancient prophetess cursed to always tell the truth but never be believed. And perhaps you felt a bit like her too. You see what others can't, feel storms before they gather, sense betrayals before they break. It's not paranoia, it's perception. Carl Jung, the father of analytical psychology, understood this deeply. He once said, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes." An awakening, my friend, is rarely comfortable. In fact, it can be a lonely road. When your spiritual awakening sharpens your awareness and pulls you ahead of the crowd, people don't always celebrate that. They question you. They push back. They tell you to stop overthinking, to lighten up. But inside, you know something real is happening. You're not unstable. You're ahead of your time. And like Cassandra, you carry the burden of seeing too much too soon. What many call anxiety or intensity is often just unrecognized insight. You see patterns, financial shifts, relationship breakdowns, emotional spirals before they show up in the physical world. It's like being a few chapters ahead in a book that everyone else is still just beginning. But what happens when you try to speak up? You get labeled dramatic, negative, even arrogant. And that's the real curse, not the vision itself, but the isolation it creates. You're not just managing what you know, you're managing how others react to your knowledge. This is especially hard for men, between 30 and 65 men who have responsibilities, families, careers, because the world often doesn't leave room for them to express emotional intelligence or intuitive perception. But denying it doesn't make it disappear. It just buries your gifts under layers of silence, frustration, or worse, self-doubt. Spiritual wisdom teaches us that awareness is a form of leadership. And in many ways, those with deep perception are spiritual scouts for the tribe. You walk ahead. You light the path. But you also take the hits first. It's no wonder you feel exhausted at times, or tempted to turn it off. But you can't, can you? Because the truth keeps knocking, and the soul keeps listening. This is the pain of awakening, not just waking up, but doing so while the rest of the world still sleeps. Still, there's beauty in this burden, because eventually, someone listens. Someone sees the trail you've blazed, and your once dismissed warnings become someone else's salvation. So the next time you feel the ache of knowing too much too soon, remember this: you were not cursed, you were chosen. Chosen to hold the uncomfortable truths, to speak them anyway, and to stand in your clarity even when others don't understand it yet. This is your spiritual strength, not your flaw. And the more you learn to trust it, the more peace you'll find in walking your own way. Now let me ask you, have you ever been dismissed for sensing the truth before others? If so, you're not alone. And your voice, no matter how long it's been silenced, still matters. Let it rise. Let it lead. Because your spiritual awakening isn't a mistake, it's your calling. I would love to hear your thoughts on this. What is your perspective on the importance of this value? Share your insights, and let's continue this conversation. 6. The King and the Poisoned Well. Fitting in versus staying true. Have you ever felt the tension between belonging and being true to yourself? Let me share with you a powerful parable, the story of the wise king and the poisoned well. In this tale, the kingdom's water supply becomes tainted, driving the people to madness. The wise king, having his own clean source, remains sane but quickly becomes seen as the outsider, the strange one. To avoid exile, he eventually drinks from the same poisoned well as the people, just to be accepted again. Now ask yourself, how many times in your life have you been tempted to drink from the poisoned well? Carl Jung saw this not as a myth, but as a deeply symbolic reflection of what happens when individuals with deep perception face the pressure to fit in. In today's world, that pressure is everywhere. Whether it's toning down your insights in meetings, pretending not to see the cracks in relationships, or staying silent about what you truly feel, the inner conflict is real. Do you conform to keep your place in the group, or do you risk isolation by speaking the truth that only you can see? Jung believed that spiritual growth demands something rare: solitude, honesty with oneself, and the courage to walk the lonely path of individuation. He warned that the moment we betray what we know to be true inside just to avoid being different, we begin to lose ourselves. And the irony? The more awakened your vision, the lonelier the path may seem at first. But the reward is clarity, alignment, and the peace of knowing that your life is built on truth, not performance. Think of the entrepreneur who senses a deeper purpose behind his business, but is mocked for slowing down to reflect. Or the woman who sees through family dysfunction, yet stays silent to keep the peace. Or the teenager who senses the emptiness behind social media validation, but fears being seen as strange if they step back. These are modern-day kings and queens facing the poisoned well. So let me ask you, where in your life are you sipping from a well that no longer nourishes your spirit? Where have you traded truth for acceptance, and how is that affecting your peace? The spiritual path is not always about escaping the world, but about transforming your place in it. Jung taught that individuation, the development of your truest self, is the soul's deepest purpose. And it begins when you stop apologizing for your clarity, when you stop shrinking away to fit in, and when you begin to honor your own vision, no matter how misunderstood it may seem. Yes, you may feel alone at first, but what you are really doing is clearing the fog so that others can finally see. Show your determination on this journey by commenting below. I keep moving forward. 7. The burden as a beacon. From suffering to leadership. Have you ever felt like your awareness is both a blessing and a burden? Carl Jung once described the process of individuation not just as a path to self-understanding, but as a spiritual awakening, an alchemical transformation of pain into power. If you've lived with the weight of deep perception, seeing through lies, feeling truths others ignore, recognizing the spiritual fractures in conversations that seem surface level, then you've likely carried that burden in silence. But what if that very burden wasn't just meant to isolate you, but to awaken you? What if it's not just a weight, but a key to something bigger than yourself? You see, the journey towards spiritual leadership doesn't begin with applause or clarity. It starts with confusion, isolation, and often unbearable sensitivity. But here's the truth. When you stop apologizing for your intensity, when you stop dimming your light just to fit into rooms too small for your soul, something shifts. You begin to see that your depth is not a defect, it's a direction. And when you honor that truth with courage, your very presence becomes a lantern in the dark for others walking the same path. The burden, once your private wilderness, transforms into a bridge, a place where your lived experiences, your wounds, and your wisdom meet the longing of others for guidance and truth. And this is where the pain takes on purpose. Because through your spiritual awakening, you no longer lead with answers, but with presence. You no longer chase approval, but attract resonance. You draw in people who aren't intimidated by your clarity, but drawn to it. The moment you fully accept your role, not as someone who fixes, but someone who reflects, is the moment your suffering becomes sacred. And in today's modern world, where distractions scream louder than inner truths, we need more men who lead from that place. We need more men who have seen too much, felt too deeply, and still choose to walk with compassion instead of bitterness. So I ask you, how would your life change if you stopped seeing your burden as a curse and started seeing it as your calling? How would your relationships shift if you spoke your truth not for validation, but as an offering? This isn't about perfection or pretending to have it all figured out. It's about stepping into spiritual maturity with authenticity, grounded in the knowledge that leadership isn't about being followed, but about being real. Jung's wisdom teaches us that when you embrace the full spectrum of your inner life, the shadows and the light, you become not just healed, but whole. And wholeness is magnetic. It doesn't demand attention, it inspires it. So if you're a man in your 30s, 40s, 50s, or 60s, carrying that quiet knowing in your bones, know this: your journey matters. Your spiritual burden is not the end of your story, it's the beginning of your legacy. Let it be the reason others find the courage to begin theirs. If this message speaks to you, take it a step further and share it with someone who might need this reminder. Together, we can build connections rooted in honesty and respect. And so, perhaps the real weight of intelligence isn't just knowing too much. It's feeling too deeply, seeing what others can't, and carrying truths that the world often refuses to acknowledge. But in that burden lies your spiritual gift. If you've ever felt misunderstood because of your depth, remember, your awareness is not a curse. It's a call to inner mastery and compassionate wisdom. If this message spoke to something within you, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom for more content that nourishes your soul. Hit the notification bell so you won't miss our next video, because your journey of awakening is just getting started.